Welcome to Gritability, a podcast about the power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds to attain the life of your dreams. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, and with me is the beautiful, radiant, ever lovely Ro Clausen.
Hello. Welcome back.
Yes, it is great to be back in the studio. It feels like we haven't been here in a while, and although these episodes might seem like they're one right after the other, we've been really, really busy lately.
Yes, we have.
And, you know, when we're talking about gritability, overcoming just like crazy odds, I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. And, you know, a lot of times we've been, I guess, a little bit reluctant to share all of the challenges that we face to actually get where we are. And I think we've done a disservice, right? Because maybe it looks easy, right? I know you make it look easy.
Thanks.
So recently we took a trip to Washington, D.C., had an opportunity to testify before the United States Sentencing Commission. And this was by invitation. They invited, first and foremost, me to come and share some of my personal experiences, both on the inside while I was in prison, what it actually took for me to accomplish what were deemed a pretty lengthy list of extraordinary and compelling, that's the legal term, extraordinary and compelling achievements. And I guess in going through that process and reliving some of those experiences, because it's one thing to put them down on paper, right? And I definitely advocate, you know, putting your wins down. You put your goals down and then you put your wins down. And I know that we have the tendency to just kind of check things off like check, did it, and then it's in the past. Well, this was an opportunity for us to really reflect, to focus in, to hone in on what some of those accomplishments were. The first part was, you know, what I was able to do in prison, but then they also wanted, I think even more importantly, to see when I was granted that relief, what did I do with my second chance? And the highlight, you know, by far for me was the fact that I was very clear that I wanted you and CJ to be there, to be a part of it. And, you know, CJ's, he's not even 2 years old yet. So this is a hearing, which I guess is technically, I don't think it's not open to the public. It's by invitation. But it's before, it's a rather austere setting, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
So there's a couple parts here. You know, I'm kind of getting ahead because
I love this because you always give like the intellectual buttoned up version. I'm like, all right, I'm going to tell him the background story, but go ahead, keep going.
So a little bit of the background story is when I initially get the call, obviously I'm excited. I accept. I'm like, yes, I want to do this. But the invitation was for me to fly to DC and to sit on this panel and to testify. And then we got an incredible offer extended to us from FAM, which is a national nonprofit, Families Against Mandatory Minimums, which we've been, well, I'll say, interacting with them for the better part of 2 decades because I had a mandatory minimum sentence. And that relationship was, I'm going to say, shaky at best for many of those years. So this was really a huge offer on their part to pick up the tab, to bring you and CJ into, you know, to bring you to DC with me so that we could all travel together, all be there as a family, be a part of it, because they saw the value of if you really want to see the personal impact, the results of that second chance, you have to see our whole family, right? Like that's what it's all about. And I can talk about, you know, the things that I accomplished on the inside and say none of it would have been possible without you. But it's totally different to have the two of you in the room with me when I'm sharing that story. And it's not just a visual representation. I say it all the time. It's the energy that we bring to everything that we do. And that energy was palpable in the room, as evidenced by when I was done. There were a lot of tears, right? It was definitely emotional. It was more emotional for me than I thought it was going to be. But it was incredible that the two of you got to be there and got to be a part of it with me. And I feel like that's exactly where we're supposed to be at this point.
Absolutely. And it made it so amazing, and it felt so full circle to be there. And it would have been one thing if it were just the two of us there. But the fact that Christian was there just made, I know what you're reaching for, just made it so, so much better. But you're so humble. And I have to tell this part. So Adam had his speech, or his 5-minute presentation, prepared, and he was going through it in his head. He knew basically what he wanted to say, but he started listening at, I think it was 8:00 in the morning, right, when it started, and he was going on at 2:00. So he was listening with one headphone in all day. We went to breakfast. He was listening. He took the baby while I got ready, because of course, it was about me and I had to look beautiful. Just kidding.
And you did.
Thank you. Took the baby. He was listening. And as he was listening in real time, he was altering his statement. So he had basically no practice, because he was altering it based off of what the commission was saying and then what the panels of people were saying. Am I saying this right?
Yep.
Yeah,
correct.
To them, and the response from the government. And that's incredible. That is unbelievably incredible. Number one, that you could do that. Number two, that some people there, and I probably would have done the same thing, read what they wrote, and they probably wrote it out and then maybe had help and practiced it, and you were just off the cuff. Number one. Number two, after each person on the panel had a turn to give their 5-minute presentation, they opened it up for the Sentencing Commission to ask questions, and you got asked a very, very pointed question. I'm trying to find my words. It kind of felt like a dig. It kind of felt like a slap on the wrist, a dig. He used the term pistol whipped, which, I feel it in my core every time someone says it, but it is in your paperwork.
It's the truth. That's what happened.
Sure. So, I mean, but okay, so it felt like a dig, but the way that you answered it off the cuff so eloquently, I mean, I'm always so proud of you, and I know I'm biased, but I literally heard attorneys behind me going, "Oh my God, he's great. Oh my God," to your attorney. And I don't know who it was, because I couldn't turn around and see, but it was just a very proud wife moment. From my perspective, though, it was the most incredible experience, but it was the most stressful experience, because we flew across the country. So there's a time zone difference, and then it's nap time. And CJ was not having it. So I kept walking in and out of this room, and there was this woman who was lovely. And I'm actually glad that this happened.
How many other children were there in the room?
0. Oh, and I should say this. So when we started, I felt kind of like I got my wrist slapped, because as we were starting, I brought all the snacks, because other mothers tell me, like, just bring a ton of snacks and everything will be fine. Just let them eat the snacks. So I bring the snacks and I take out the snacks, and our baby throws them across the room. So now he's the only baby and he's making a mess. So I'm a nervous wreck, and I'm like, please just fall asleep. So as we start, the head of the whole commission stops and he says, looks right at us and he says, "I see we have a very special guest in the room, so we won't get started until he's quieted down." And I was like, oh no. Oh God.
But that was not.
I misread it, because I'm the nervous mom, right? I'm a nervous person regardless, but I'm like, he can't be screaming in here. So this other woman who was, I don't know who she was, but she was either with FAM or she was an attorney. She was somebody that was known in the room. And she said to me right before it started, she said, listen, she's like, I have 2 boys of my own. She said, if you want to be in here, because I know this is really important to you, if he'll come to me, if he doesn't have stranger danger, I'll take him. And I was joking with her, and I was like, if he didn't have stranger danger, you could take him all night long, but he's not going to stay with you. But thank you. I mean, we could try. So when he started to get a little bit rowdy, I walked out of the room and she followed me out, but she left the door open. And I was kind of grateful that the commission got to see that motherhood bond because she was somebody important. Not that we weren't, but you know what I mean? Somebody that they would recognize that was helping me with the baby. And then you were able to flip what you were saying and you worked that right in. Like, what you hear back there is my son. And you worked it right into what you were saying. It's beautiful. I actually have it on video that I'm going to post on our YouTube channel.
Beautiful. Yeah. For me, when, talk about full circle moments. And as you said that, I was reminded, I forget that I still have this in my pocket. This is, as you can see, this has been around a while, not just since I've been home. This goes back over a decade, which puts me back inside. I made quite a few of these. This is one that I still carry with me, and it's my goal is to speak before United States Congress about the need for radical criminal justice reform. Now, I've spoke to the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee. I've had the opportunity to meet with a lot of different individuals, but this was something that I could not even have anticipated when I wrote this because it didn't exist as a possibility, meaning extraordinary and compelling circumstances was not yet even a vehicle to gain compassionate release. Like, it didn't even exist. So this whole opportunity to go in front of the commission, who is now reviewing amendments that are before them that essentially will give other individuals, those that I left behind who were serving crazy sentences, who are still serving those sentences, that they now have a chance based on what I've presented, what the other people that spoke on my panel said, and what other witnesses came before them. They can pass these amendments that give other people the opportunity to gain the same relief that I gained. So talk about heavy weight of responsibility. And I have felt that since I gained my release from prison, because I always knew that it was a very narrow crack that I slid out through, that, so many others were waiting. I was able to slip out, and like the phone call that we got from Sean, my attorney, who said, hey, today's that day where if they would have appealed, you'd be going back to prison.
Oh, I still get chills. It makes me nauseous every time you say that because the day you got that call, CJ was about 2 months old.
2 months old.
And
yeah, I would have been going back
for life.
For life.
And all that flashed in I literally have chills all over my body saying this. What flashed in my mind when you said that were all those poor little babies that would be crying, leaving visit. I'm going to cry every time I left. And over the years, I watched these babies grow up and having to leave their daddy in prison every time they left them. And that's what flashed in my mind. Oh, okay.
We watched a lot of children grow up in that visiting room.
We did.
Over the years. Wow. Yeah. So that weighs heavy on me. It's always weighed heavy on me. The responsibility that comes along with the opportunity. So there have been a lot of circumstances. That list of extraordinary and compelling achievements, right, includes a number of things that had never been done before. First being the first and probably only ever live video conference. Keep in mind, this is before the pandemic, before Zoom became mainstream. From inside the Federal Bureau of Prisons, we presented at a national conference for higher education in prisons at the University of Pittsburgh.
I wish we could articulate how miraculous that is, because the BOP is all about safety and security, and that, according to them, could have been a safety and security risk. And they did pull the plug on you the year prior.
They did. The year prior, they pulled the plug. This time I was able to present, but not without plenty of, I'm going to say warnings. You can call them threats, actually. And I'm the guy that's serving a life sentence, right? Like, they have my physical body for the indefinite future. So believe me, those threats are real. Like they can pretty much do whatever they want. There's not a whole lot of recourse on the inside. So having that hanging over my head, but feeling the responsibility, like I needed to be out there doing those things. And that wasn't just for me. That was the sense of responsibility. Like I knew that I needed to speak for all those who couldn't speak. And that I was in a position to do that. The fact is, I mean, I was still working on finding my own voice, like, because my greatest fear has always been public speaking. And I know it probably doesn't seem like that now. And I don't feel the nervousness that I once did, but it was in fact paralyzing at one point to where that's why I always have a bottle of water. Because early on, the physiological response is my mouth would go so dry I couldn't get a word out. That's how crippling my fear of public speaking was. So to be able to do this video conference, to be able to MC the first ever national reentry summit where we had hundreds of people come in from outside the prison. Again, this is a prison, like safety, security, like what these people had to go through just to get in, the pat downs, the metal detectors. You think TSA is rough. Yeah, BOP takes it to a whole different level. So what these people had to go through to get inside, because they had heard about what we were doing and they're like, man, we need to be there. We need to be a part of this. These are government, officials. These are community partners from reentry organizations. They're educators. College professors were like, oh my God, like we want to be a part of this. So all these people come and I MC an event inside prison. Like that was my first big, event that I got to host. To do that was like unheard of. And then to do it again a second year and bring out Chef Jeff as our keynote speaker, right? The guy's been on Oprah multiple times, written all these books, Food Network TV.
But I have to clarify that they didn't put that together. You put that together. You got Jeff there.
Yes. Yes. All by, I'm going to say, my own design. And those are things, again, like you're pointing out, what we went through, the things that we had to do. Like we don't really talk about what actually went into those. I'm talking about things that had never been done, never even conceived. So, going through this process, writing these things out, as I'm looking at some of my notes, because I got all these notebooks, like you see the books back here, there are all sorts of folders and notebooks at our house. Because I came home from prison with my cart, right? Like I came running out and I told her, I got boxes, like we're going to have to find a place to put them because I wasn't leaving that stuff behind. And it's gold to look back on those things. And I pointed this out because I had it out the other night, one of those first, before that reentry event took place, I actually I made a flyer. I made a flyer that said, okay, so you're not going to let us do this video conference. You're not going to let us be, zoomed out. I'm going to invite everybody here. And these are the people that I'm going to put on the guest list, and they're going to come from all over the country. Now, mind you, my peers, the other people that I'm not only incarcerated with, that I'm part of, these programs are like, dude, have you lost your mind? They're like, first, what makes you think any of those people would want to come here? Any of them going to want to come inside a prison? And then two, how would they ever allow you to do something like this? And I'm like,
you're going to jail. In jail.
You're going to be in the hole, man. You're going to the hole for this one. Because they had already threatened me numerous times. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to make it happen. Like that was the power, the belief that I had that, man, not only could I do it, but that we were capable of anything.
And I love that you're saying that because I feel like we've kind of gotten a little bit away from as the greatest, when we were the greatest that we were at that, we've gotten a little bit away from that, because even today you said something, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh God, like, you said something like, well, you know, I said it, so it's just going to have to happen. Like you promised, not that you promised somebody something, but
I did.
You did?
I did. I made a commitment.
You made a commitment. That's a better way to say it. And in the back of my head, I'm like, oh
It's a promise,
boy.
yeah.
But back then we would have been like, okay, so how do we make it happen?
Yep. It's going to happen. Like, that's not being attached to how, just like, I get attached to goals. Like when I say this is what we're going to do, like we're going to do it and we'll figure it out. And again, yeah, I feel like, and this was something we always talked about, getting to this point, and I think most people, 99% of people, of couples, get to a point where it's routine, right? They're so caught up in their routine, in the grind. Many of them are like grinding day to day, but they're stuck in the grind and they lose sight of that energy, that enthusiasm, that excitement for what it is, and that belief in themselves and their ability to like manifest, to create that, to make it happen, to do whatever is necessary. So yeah, this going in front of the commission, going back, highlighting that list of extraordinary and compelling achievements, what we went through, not just what we survived, right? Because everybody in there, and I pointed this out to the commission, everybody that was on that panel with me, like everyone on my side who had done time speaks from a totally different perspective that the people on the other side, working professionals who are involved in the criminal justice system, will never, ever understand what you actually have to do just to get through the time. Like doing it.
And I think that's what bothered me about that, the question that you got, that you wound up answering really eloquently, because I felt like it was on display that he had no comprehension.
And that's why it was perfect.
Yeah.
It was the perfect question because it demonstrated exactly what I was saying, which goes back to the example I brought up was, you know, when we were focused on clemency, right? And I had a U.S. attorney who was like super progressive. This was a guy who's like, man, we need to reform these laws and we give out way too much time. When he asked me, right, to tell him, I told him I have stacked 924Cs. I've got a 213-year sentence. He's like, whoa. He's like, that's a crazy sentence. He's like, how much time you got in? And I was, at the time, it was 16 years going on 17. He's like, eh. And I was like, what? Did he just shrug off 16, almost 17 years?
Well, because I think you always said in the feds, they give out 10 years like it's nothing. And you always taught me this, like, just stop for a second and think about what the world was like 16 years ago, right? Like, was there even social media? Was there, I know Google was around, but like 16 years, okay, it was 20 years really. That was, you know, when they shrugged that off. So much in the world has happened. And I always said this, like, a baby that was born the day that you went to prison was legally allowed to vote and drink the day you got out of prison. Think about it.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And somebody's just like, you know, I go home every night. I stay with my family. But 16 years, okay, no big deal.
Well, it's the same thing. It's, you know, people in the criminal justice system, professionals have become so desensitized to the amount of time that we give out. And that's a reflection of that question that was, it was part accusation, part question, right?
Yeah.
Because it was like, hey man, you had serious crimes, you pistol whipped people, you know, there were accidental discharges, there were things that happened, very violent crimes. Why do you deserve a second chance, right? Why should you have gotten out?
And what I hate about, and I'm just saying this for the record, what I hate about that question is you can't clarify what happened during that, because it would just look like, it would just.
I don't feel the need to clarify it, because regardless of whether it was by my own hand or not, I am still responsible for all of those things that happened.
I agree, but
right or wrong, I'm still responsible. So when people do frame it that way, I understand what they're doing. But listen, like, what takes away from that effect is me owning my role.
Yeah, and in this instance you had to, but it just gets me in my core.
I know. I get it.
It's the pit bull.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I love you for it.
I love you too.
So in that moment, when he threw that accusation, like I knew what was coming. And that was to be able to sit there, to have no apprehension, to have no fear of the moment, the gravity of it, knowing what was on the line. Like when you talk about like, man, you only get one shot. I have had that one shot numerous times. And every single time, you know, that's been pitched to me, I've been able to hit it out of the park. So if I'm ever going to bet on anyone, I'm going to bet on me. And I'm going to bet on us because we're not here by chance, right? And I say it all the time. Everybody has the ability. They have the potential to do it. But so few people have the courage to actually step up and take that swing. Right?
Absolutely.
So, and that was it, right? So coming out of that hearing, you know, that list of extraordinary and compelling achievements, being able to go in there, articulate that, to convince, I feel pretty confident that we convinced the commission to give the broadest interpretation to those amendments. I'm confident that others are going to get the opportunity to gain the same relief, the same second chance at life that I've gotten. So much so that today I was on the phone. The commitment that you were talking about was I made a commitment to one of those guys that I left behind who's still serving a life sentence. There's actually 4 of them at that facility in particular who, this is where, you know, the compound effect coming out of the commission, you know, because I made a very bold statement or offer to help ensure that the Federal Bureau of Prisons has the same opportunities that I was able to take advantage of, which no longer exist. Like, I would love to make sure that everybody in there right now has those same opportunities, and I'm willing to come inside. That's right. I'm willing to go back to prison on a daily basis, right? No overnights. I'm willing to go back to prison and help deliver that programming, get things back up and running. And I'm willing to go back to that same facility that I was at where we know that there are people who are not going to be happy to see me.
Ouch.
Right? That's the reality. But I'm willing to do that. And I made a commitment to one of those gentlemen, one of those coaches, facilitators that I left behind. I told him today that I'm going to do everything that I can. And I've already made that offer. I've had the conversation with executives at the Bureau of Prisons about mapping out what that is going to look like. I made the offer. I said, listen, I'm willing to go in and I'm just waiting on that phone call back. But to ensure that those opportunities are available, because there's other guys who are willing to do those same extraordinary things. Like, they have that same mindset. And me having that conversation today really, again, reignited that, was a reminder of, like, we need to be here, like, in this space more.
Yeah. And I think we can all take away a lesson from this, right? Because here's the situation. There's a panel of people, Q&A is going on. They ask Adam the pointed question. You nailed it. You hit it out of the park. And then they asked a couple of other questions and somebody was answering one. And then it gets quiet and Adam says, it's so good. He's like, well, you have a panel of people here who would be more than willing, I'm sure, to go back in and help you. I would be more than willing to take my time to go in there and to help, whatever you said. But it was perfect. And the whole reason I'm explaining this is because you took a chance, you shot your shot, and you got it. And it's almost another kind of miracle. It's unheard of.
Yeah, and we're going to keep getting those shots. And the point is to be ready when you get that opportunity. And I say it all the time, and this isn't just for people in prison, right? Like, the reality is, if you're somebody in prison, you get a lot fewer opportunities.
Yeah.
You might get one. You might have that one chance to have a conversation. There's a person who comes through the facility. They come through on a tour. Maybe they're an administrator. Maybe it's a member of Congress, right? Or maybe it's, remember when President Barack Obama took the tour and he went inside the facility? Listen, they locked everybody down. They let a couple people talk to him, but those people were like closely screened. But there were other people, like guys in the cells when he walked through, that maybe had a chance to talk to him through the door. Like, if that's your only shot, right? If your life depends on it, like, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
Are you ready for that? Like, our whole purpose, like gritability, is not just about grinding every day to get through. It's about making sure that you're ready when that opportunity comes, so that, man, you seize it. Like, there's no hesitation. You can't hesitate. You got to, go after it with everything that you got. And people might think you're crazy. I was told that numerous times, right? Everybody says it like, you're out of your mind. These are the same people now who are like on this side. They're like, damn, boy, like, you said you were going to do it and you did it. Yes, we did it. We did it repeatedly. And we have repeatedly put ourselves in that position. So knowing that, we're at that place in life, I think we got plenty of time to cover kind of the next thing, because if we're talking about things that have happened recently here, so when we get back from DC, some other things happened here, some other challenges that came up, coming back into the life that we've established here in Las Vegas, right? We worked very hard over the last year plus to establish a couple different businesses focused on providing employment and housing, right? That was our goal. Staffing business was up and running. We were putting people to work, all focused on second chances, right? Individuals who had been through the system or were somehow system impacted, that really needed somebody to get behind them, support them, helping them build relationships with employers in the community who saw the value of their lived experience. Everything that we're talking about, saw their gritability. Like, that's what we were promoting, right? Like, invest in people who've already gone through they've overcome incredible adversity, and like, they just need somebody to give them a shot. Let them prove themselves. So those were the people that we were working with. And to be honest, not all of them worked out. Not everybody was ready for it. Not all of them stepped up when they got that shot. But it was something that directly reflected like everything that we've invested in. And I poured everything that I had into it.
You did.
Probably too much, to where it took away from other things that maybe brought us more joy.
Yeah, but I think you could always say that in hindsight, and you're the type of person, we're the type of people, we're not going to do anything half-assed, right? If you're trying to build a business, if you're doing a workout, whatever it is, you're going to pour everything you have into it. And is there too much?
Good point. But keeping first things first. Our family, our priorities need to be first. And I think at times like this, detracted from us a little bit. And as evidenced by, we had to close the businesses down. We had to fold them. Some things happened. And to be completely transparent, it was not something that I anticipated at that point. I was trying to find a way through to navigate the circumstances. But ultimately we came to a point where legally it wasn't feasible. There was no way forward. So with that realization, and it happened pretty quick, the result of a meeting, and with that realization was like, oh my God, like, now what? Because the reality hits you, like, there's people that are depending on us, for jobs, for work, for their livelihood, their families. There are relationships that have been built, like hard earned, like to develop, to establish credibility in this space as someone, to be someone who's formerly incarcerated. There's a higher threshold, right? to establish that credibility. Because the reality is there's a lot of people in this space with backgrounds who've burned people and eroded that trust. So it makes it a little bit harder for the next person to earn it, right? And I'm always conscious of that, making sure that I don't ever do anything that's going to negatively affect my credibility, nor anyone who I'm trying to help to make sure that they're at a better place moving forward. Anybody that's coming behind me, right? Like I'm always out there out front, like modeling what I believe is, that life of integrity, what it has to be for somebody with a background. And to all of a sudden realize in that moment, like, oh man, it's over. It's like, how do I unwind this? How do I tell these people where we've set these expectations, and I've worked every day to uphold these, like I got to unwind it. And I'll say this, that experience, like I wasn't ready for that either. I wasn't ready to shut everything down and wrap it up and know that it was going to be really challenging to do that. But the response from every single person that I had to reach out and contact, and I feel like I'm giving him the worst possible news I could give him. And every single one of them was like, don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I'm like supposed to be consoling you. I'm the one delivering bad news. And you're telling me, don't worry about it. These are people who potentially don't have a job to go to tomorrow. They're telling me, don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. And I'm like, oh my God.
But do you want to know why I think that happened?
Why?
Because you always say this. You say there are no such thing in your world as business relationships. All relationships are personal. And I think it's how you interacted with those people, interact still with those people, and how you interact with everybody. It's very personal. It's very personable. And that makes a big difference. People feel heard. They feel seen. And they feel appreciated.
Thank you for saying that.
You're welcome.
And I would say that there has to be some truth to that, simply by the response, which I walked away from the whole experience where initially it seemed devastating, right? Where I walked away feeling good about how I was able to close this out. And at the same time, if I'm being honest about it, like I felt a great sense of relief.
Yeah.
Right? It was a huge relief because I felt like I was shouldering a lot, and it's not the same responsibility that I feel where going in front of the Sentencing Commission, modeling, advocating for others who are left behind. Like every day, I carry that proudly in everything that I do. Like I'm leading a life that ensures whomever looks to me as that model, as that example, is going to look and go, okay, like he's a reason we should give someone else a second chance. So I carry that proudly. Like that's not a weight. That's not a burden. Whereas with the staffing agency specifically, like that was it was a heavy weight. It was burdensome because I'm not saying it didn't feel purpose driven. It felt like I was just carrying a heavy load that was maybe a little bit outside of my purpose. And if I would have listened to that beforehand, I could have found a better way to navigate it so it didn't feel heavy.
Yeah, and we said earlier, right, that we, just because we're gritty and a lot of times we neglect to share the hard stuff or the difficult things that we're going through. And I think that there were some flags. And I think that, I know because we've discussed this. We chose to ignore some gut feelings, some red flags out of desperation. You're trying to build this business. You haven't taken a paycheck in a year. I mean, of course not of course, no, I shouldn't say this because we'll never do it again. But I can see why, in hindsight, there were maybe flags that were ignored and you shouldered a lot of the burden because you had so much invested and it was an act of desperation at points.
And that's where comes back to maybe why it felt so heavy was because I knew what you were shouldering for our family in not having that income, right? Like us not being able to live and do all of the things that we really wanted to do, like those things. First and foremost, let me just be clear. Us being together, like every day, waking up, seeing you and CJ, like the level of gratitude that we have because of what we've gone through to get to where we are, like those things, the significance of them cannot be understated. However, us wanting to be able to freely do other things that maybe require us being in a better financial situation, those were things as we're building this business. I don't have the income coming in. Our family is relying on you. And you want to talk about grit. Like you being, because I know you're not, you do not love what you do, right? And that part weighs heavy on me, but you're like, I'm going to do what I need to do to get our family through this and to be fully invested in that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I guess it comes back, that silly cliche, like don't sweat the small stuff. Compared to everything we've been through, this is the small stuff. Like everything's going to work out. It's going to be fine.
But not everyone has that mindset.
Yeah, and I hope we can pass that along to people because honestly, like it's not the end of the world. We're going to get through it. We're going to be fine. Why are we going to fight day to day? And I'm going to be a brat about things because I want everything yesterday. I want everything right now. We've been through so much. This is nothing.
And that's where perspective comes in because this is why most relationships fail. Why? Disputes over finances, I think is like up about like near the top of the list, right? So being in a situation where finances are tight at best, right? And the way that you just described it, like you made that sound so easy and so simple. And I know that anybody listening right now would be like, what? She shouldered all that and just like shrugged it off. And I think that there is a huge lesson in that.
Yeah. And let me be clear. Like we're not in a situation where we're going to be homeless tomorrow. I mean, we're okay. So maybe that's why it's easier for me to come from that perspective. And maybe it would be different if things were different.
That's a good point, but I also don't want to minimize like how tight things were. There's a tendency nowadays, like people see social media, and we've talked about this, like being completely transparent. Like how many people out there are willing to actually talk about? Like you don't ever see what people are going through, right? Like everybody just wants to post the pics with the cars, the houses, the vacations. Like they don't show you the grind, like what you had to go through to actually get there. And we've talked about this with numerous guests on here, right? Like we're seeing people at that stage already. And I think for us too, like I'm sure people look and go, oh man, you guys got it great because of how we carry it, right? Like they don't see us like sweating things.
Yeah. George, should we post more of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We need more sweat.
Okay.
We need more sweat. We need more. I mean, you can get the daily sweat. Like, I think people know where to find us every day, getting it in, like grinding out the physical side of things. You're gonna see much more of that sweat.
Yeah. But I'm talking about like the hardships.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is there's plenty of hardships.
Well, and I think that's what made people follow us to begin with, because it was almost a situation, if you could do it, I could do it, right? Like if you're with this lifer and you're happy, then, and my guy has 5 years, like what do I have to complain about? And it's funny, I've always been able to do that. So I remember when I was training for my sixth fitness competition and I won the jerseys, right? And I went into the gym with pictures. I was so proud of myself. And this girl comes up to me and she's looking through them, right? And she's like, oh, I'm going to do this. If you could do it, I could do it. And I didn't say anything nasty because it was my friend's girlfriend. Mm-hmm. But I thought, prove it. Okay, right. You can do it, I can do it. Okay, go ahead. I dare you.
Did you ever see her take the stage?
Never, not once.
Right.
No.
And that's what I'm talking about. Like people see the results, they don't get to see the work generally.
Yeah. But I'm totally off track right now. It just popped into my head.
No, you're not.
But I think the fact that I showed, like, especially on YouTube and on social media, the hardships that we went through. I mean, I would go on there and I would cry sometimes for 20 minutes in a video, and people find strength in that. So maybe we should post more of that.
Yeah. I'm definitely with you. I mean, being transparent, like, believe me, it's not something I want to brag about, failing businesses, having to close these down.
But how many billionaires say that their first business took off? Most of them have plenty of failed businesses. I literally, when I was getting ready for this podcast, was listening to Lisa Nichols, and she goes, the difference is all of us have failed. And she was talking about just that. I can't believe this just came up. And she said, the difference is our perspective. We're willing to fail forward. And majority of people get stuck and they fail backwards.
True. Like, how many people fail, want to become an entrepreneur, want to start their own business. They go out there, they take a shot, they fail, and they're like, I'm going back to my 9 to 5, and that's it. And they give up on their dream, and that's just the end of it. That's the unfortunate reality. The reality is, I mean, most people don't even take the shot.
Yeah.
Then out of the percentage that do, it's a high percentage that, when things go wrong, they quit. And I know our competitive advantage is like just our reference point. What you said, perspective. Our reference point from where we came from makes everything else seem simple by comparison. Like, that's just the reality. And I think occasionally I remind myself where, when we're in the middle of a tough situation, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't so bad. It's really not. And again, like you said, like, we're not going to be homeless. I mean, there have been some months where it's kind of close. I'm like, I'm looking to help other people get support for housing. I'm like, man, we might be on that list soon. But having said that, like, to be transparent about, you're going to hear from billionaires and other very successful people after the fact. They'll talk about those failures. Most of them do not talk about the failures when they're happening.
Sure.
And maybe that's the difference.
Yeah.
Being willing to share that stuff and say, man, this is what happened, but check it out. Like, we're still pressing forward, and it hasn't even really been a blip. And again, because of how we pressed forward, the rewards that were gained through that process, the positive feedback that I got, like, that only inspired me. And what we are now focused on and the opportunities that have been afforded to us are also the result of that time and effort that was invested. And if we wouldn't have stayed the course, right, like, none of that would have been discovered. But it all fits together now. So I think there is a lot of value in us being able to share this in real time, the struggles that we do have, failing business, opportunities that result. And there's an offer that was just made to me that basically capitalizes on all of those relationships that I made over the past year, where if this thing works out, like, I'm coming right back to them and being able to provide incredible value at a way to fulfill our purpose, to satisfy, our financial goals, to be able to do all those things. But if I would have given up, like, never even would have seen that.
Yeah. And I think it wasn't just, I mean, that's the biggest thing right now. But the day that you shut the doors, I think it was the very next day. So just a few hours later, there were 3 major things that popped up. You got 3 separate phone calls from 3 different people with opportunities. And that's just kind of like that metaphor of cutting out the crap, letting that stuff go, and opening up for the things that are supposed to happen. That was just kind of hindering you and getting in the way.
So true. Absolutely. I'm excited about everything that's in front of us. And I think that we're going to have a whole lot more successes, things to share, to celebrate as we move forward and continue to share this journey with everybody. I think this episode was a little bit of a divergence from kind of the past ones, what we've done. Like, it was the first time we actually just stopped and reflected on what we've been focused on recently.
Yeah.
was there anything else that I missed? Anything? Because you have incredible perspective and you constantly, give me insights or share feedback where I'm just like, wow.
Thank you. I don't think you missed anything, but we did get a question on social media today that does kind of fit. So I'm going to paraphrase because I don't feel like taking out my phone and looking. But basically, she asked, and I think your answer might be different from mine, but she asked, do you think without my help and me fighting on the outside for all those years, you would have made it out?
Oof.
Yeah. And
No.
I asking you on the podcast because she said, I don't even know if you guys are going to see this or ever answer, but I really feel like I would like to know. See, and I think yes.
No.
Why do you say no?
See, it's a very difficult question for me to answer because who I am today is so intertwined with your support and allowing me to become the person that I needed to be to accomplish all of those things that I accomplished.
I feel the same way, vice returned, right? But wait, I said that wrong. I feel I'm a better person because of everything that we have intertwined. So thank you, same. But I still think your personality, you would have pushed and fought your way out. It wouldn't have been me that got you out, but I didn't get you out. That helped,
Yes, you did.
that fought, right, to get you out. And
No. Let's go back and give credit where credit is due. Like you were the one who was on the front lines. Let's just be honest. Like I can point to very specific things. You're the one who reached out and got a hold of Sean.
are we fighting?
Yes, we are. This is very controversial right now. Like you reached out to Sean. You were like, you need to contact this guy. Here's his info. Help to, like that relationship right there is largely responsible for us being here today.
He got you out.
Listen, that's not just one. There are numerous instances. You built a whole support network that has gotten behind us. Our story has given us national exposure. Like, I couldn't have done that on my own. You did that. And there are numerous. You want me to keep going here?
Sure.
Because there are countless. You and my mom at the White House. You know what I mean? Like connecting with Amy Pova, Clemency Now. Like there's things that I could not have done on my own. And you know what just flashed through my mind when you were talking was that because you were saying, well, you would have found a way out. You're right. I would have gone over the fence.
No, you would not.
That's what I would have done. You want the honest truth? Like I would not be the person that I am today, which is largely my vision for the future revolves around you, around us, our family, all of those shared goals that we created together. Without that, I'm focused on me, on saving my life. Literally, that would be like getting up over the fence. And I could tell some crazy stories because there were people who propositioned me about digging tunnels out of prison. Literally.
You were going to Shawshank it?
For real.
But
For
let
real.
me just be clear on my stance, okay?
Yes.
I agree with everything you said, and I'm not sitting here like, I'm just going to say no so he blows smoke. You know what I mean? Like, I agree with all that, and I fought my ass off, ride or die for real. But I still think, had I not fought that hard for you for all of those years, I still think it maybe it would have taken a little bit longer, but I still think you would have. You're such a tenacious person, and you are way better than me at reaching out, making connections, building those connections, nurturing those connections. I think eventually through one of the organizations, maybe not FAM, but like a FAM, you would have, and the guys that you connected with on the inside.
Think about what you're saying right now. Just think about it. Like if we talk this through to its logical conclusion, it doesn't work. It doesn't.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying is true. Like think about the people and the things, all of those things that you're talking about right now. Let's be realistic about them. Without your involvement, they do not happen. It doesn't happen. I'm not sitting here.
Not the way it did.
Not even not the way that it did. Like it just doesn't happen. And that's a reality. You know what I mean? Like everyone who's in that situation needs it's more than an advocate, needs a ride or die.
Needs a row.
Needs a row. Row is the ride or die. Like that's...
It reminds me of Kev, the best that ever did it. So thank you for that question. We love getting questions on social media, and thanks for getting Adam and I into a fight. Just kidding.
Yeah, we don't argue about much, right? That's a heck of a thing to argue about.
And if that was a fight,
No, you're right. So, man, life is good, right? Like when
Absolutely.
that's what you argue about, you know that you're in the right place with the right person. And man, it's been an incredible episode. I see we're winding down here. So we're going to be back here with more stories, power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, and
I'm Ro Clausen.
we'll see you back here on the next episode.